On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected.
Thank you to all our amazing channel members for your generous support.
Lorie Nelson, born Dixie K. Nelson in 1933, was an American actress and model best remembered for her roles in 1950s films such as Revenge of the Creature and Bend of the River. She represented the image of the post-war Hollywood ingenue, graceful, charming, and caught between the fading studio system and the new cultural forces reshaping cinema. Nelson passed away on August 23, 2020, at the age of 87 from Alzheimer's disease. Her death, though natural, was marked by the slow decline of memory and identity, a tragic contrast for someone whose career had been built on image and recognition. The circumstances of Nelson's passing reflect the challenges of her generation in two ways. First, Alzheimer's disease is one of the defining health crises of the late 20th and early 21st centuries, a condition that underscores humanity's vulnerability even in times of medical advancement. Second, her career arc mirrored the difficulties faced by many women in Hollywood, where youthful beauty was often celebrated but rarely sustained as a foundation for long-term stardom. Her death was not sensational, but it resonated quietly, highlighting the fragility of fame and the way illness erases personal and cultural memory alike. The immediate consequence of her passing was a wave of remembrance from fans of classic cinema and horror enthusiasts, especially those who cherished the creature from the Black Lagoon series. Her death also served as a moment of reflection on an era of Hollywood often overshadowed by its male stars, drawing attention back to the women who shaped its stories and aesthetics. While Lorie Nelson did not alter the course of history in the dramatic sense, her departure invited audiences to consider the transitory nature of fame and the importance of preserving cultural memory. In terms of legacy, Nelson's death amplified her legend in subtle but enduring ways. Nostalgia-driven communities online celebrated her contributions to 1950s film, ensuring her name lived on beyond her years. For fans of science fiction and horror, her roles became emblematic of the genre's golden age. Her memory has been immortalized through film retrospectives, online archives, and the ongoing popularity of the cult classics in which she appeared. Nelson's passing reveals a broader truth about humanity's relationship with mortality and memory. We strive to preserve fragments of life through art and commemoration, even as time erodes personal presence. By celebrating her performances, audiences keep alive not just Nelson herself, but the values of an era: romance, innocence, and the enduring fascination with storytelling. In remembering Lorie Nelson, we affirm the human need to resist forgetting, to give permanence to fleeting lives through culture, memory, and love of the arts. Michael Nader, born in 1945, was an American actor best known for his commanding performances on television, particularly as Dex Dexter on the 1980s primetime drama Dynasty and as Dimitri Merrick on the long-running soap opera All My Children. Nader passed away on August 23, 2021, at the age of 76, from cancer. His death was natural, the result of illness, yet it carried a symbolic weight that resonated with fans who had grown up watching him embody characters defined by resilience, power, and charisma. The circumstances of Nader's passing reflected challenges faced by his generation of actors who rose to prominence during the golden era of soap operas and network television. His career was shaped by the popularity of serialized drama, which offered millions of viewers a sense of continuity and escape during turbulent decades marked by economic and social shifts. However, Just as the genre itself struggled to remain relevant in the 21st century against reality television and streaming platforms, Nader's later years were marked by reduced visibility. His death underscored the passage of an era where soaps once dominated daytime and evening schedules, serving as cultural touchstones for families. The immediate consequence of his death was an outpouring of grief and nostalgia from fans and former colleagues. Co-stars and admirers reflected on his ability to embody strength and vulnerability simultaneously, qualities that made his characters memorable. His passing also highlighted the broader decline of soap operas as a central part of American entertainment, sparking conversations about the cultural impact of serialized storytelling in shaping television history. While Nader's death did not radically shift the trajectory of history, it amplified his legend within the community of loyal soap opera enthusiasts. His portrayals remain preserved through reruns, fan archives, and online streaming, ensuring that his charisma continues to captivate new audiences. His career represents both the glamour and the volatility of television fame, reminding us of how cultural icons are tied to the mediums that elevate them. Ultimately, Michael Nader's death reveals humanity's enduring relationship with memory and performance. We immortalize figures like him not simply because of their celebrity, but because they embody moments in cultural history that defined an era of shared viewing experiences. Through fan tributes, retrospectives, and the enduring appeal of classic television, Nader lives on as part of a collective memory. His passing underscores the way art allows us to transcend mortality, turning fleeting roles into timeless reflections of the human desire for connection, romance, and drama. William Wallace, the famed Scottish knight and national hero, met his death on August 23, 1305, in one of the most brutal public executions of medieval England. Captured by English forces after years of leading resistance against King Edward I's occupation of Scotland, Wallace was taken to London, charged with treason, and sentenced to death. Yet the charge itself reflected the values and power struggles of the era. Wallace had never sworn allegiance to Edward, and thus his treason was more symbolic than legal. His execution, by hanging, drawing, and quartering, was intended to serve as both punishment and warning, a spectacle meant to crush Scottish hopes for independence. The violent circumstances of Wallace's death highlighted the medieval world's reliance on public executions as political theater. It was not merely about ending a life, but about asserting dominance and instilling fear. For the English crown, Wallace represented the defiance of an oppressed people, and his execution embodied the ruthless lengths rulers would go to preserve authority. Yet, paradoxically, this attempt at deterrence only magnified his legacy. The immediate consequence of Wallace's death was outrage and renewed resistance among the Scots. Though leaderless for a time, his martyrdom fueled the resolve of men like Robert the Bruce, who eventually led Scotland to victory at Bannockburn in 1314 and secured independence through the Declaration of Arbroath in 1320. Wallace's gruesome death did not end the struggle. It amplified it, transforming him from a military commander into a symbol of liberty and defiance against tyranny. In death, Wallace's legend grew far beyond what he had achieved in life. Chroniclers, poets, and later dramatists enshrined him as Scotland's eternal patriot. His story was immortalized in Blind Harry's 15th-century epic The Wallace, and centuries later in popular culture through Mel Gibson's Braveheart. These portrayals, while sometimes mythologized, cemented Wallace as an enduring figure of resistance against oppression. Ultimately, Wallace's death reveals the paradox of mortality and power. While rulers sought to erase dissent through violence, memory often turns victims into legends greater than their living selves. Humanity immortalizes such figures in literature, art, and national commemoration, not only to honor their sacrifice, but also to remind future generations of the universal struggle for freedom. Wallace's death, though cruel, ensured his eternal place in history as a symbol of defiance and the enduring human spirit. Ed Warren, famed paranormal investigator and demonologist, died on August 23, 2006, at the age of 79. His death came after years of declining health, much of it tied to a debilitating stroke he suffered in 2001. Unlike the violent or sudden passings of many historical figures, Warren's death was natural, yet it carried profound symbolic weight. For decades, he and his wife Lorraine had become cultural icons in the study and dramatization of supernatural phenomena. His passing marked not only the end of a life, but also the fading of a unique era of popular fascination with the paranormal as filtered through the Warrens' lens. Warren's death reflected the challenges of his time, a 20th century deeply torn between science, skepticism, and enduring belief in the unseen. At a time when modern rationalism dominated, Ed and Lorraine Warren captured the imagination of millions by insisting that forces beyond human comprehension influenced the world. His death came just as a new generation of media, books, television, and eventually film franchises was rediscovering the allure of haunted houses and demonic possession. Rather than diminishing his influence, his passing enhanced his mystique, strengthening his image as a man who had ventured into realms few dared to explore. The immediate consequence of his death was a wave of reflection within both paranormal and popular culture communities. For believers, it felt like losing a pioneering voice who had dedicated his life to uncovering truths hidden in the shadows. For skeptics, it marked the close of a controversial chapter. Yet, within a few years, Warren's legacy was reborn on the big screen with the Conjuring film series, which fictionalized the Warrens' most famous cases and brought their names into mainstream awareness for a global audience. Ironically, Ed's death amplified his legend far more than his life alone could have achieved. In reflecting on his passing, we see how humanity wrestles with mortality, power, and memory in unique ways. Figures like Ed Warren are immortalized not through monuments or political victories, but through stories that blur the line between fact and myth. In literature, film, and folklore, his image survives as both a seeker of truth and a cultural icon of the uncanny. His death reminds us that even natural endings can spark legends, and that memory, shaped by art and storytelling, is often more enduring than life itself. David Koch, the American businessman, philanthropist, and political donor, died on August 23, 2019, at the age of 79. His death followed years of declining health due to prostate cancer, which he had battled since the early 1990s. Unlike the violent ends of warriors or rulers from centuries past, Koch's passing was natural, yet it underscored a distinctly modern reality: the intersection of immense personal wealth, medical advancement, and the limits of human control over mortality. Despite having access to the finest health care, his death revealed that even power and fortune cannot fully shield one from the inevitability of disease. Koch's life and death reflected the challenges and values of his era, particularly the tension between economic influence, democracy, and philanthropy. Along with his brother Charles, he co-owned Koch Industries, one of the largest privately held companies in the world. Beyond business, the Koch brothers became synonymous with large-scale political spending, funding conservative and libertarian causes that shaped American politics for decades. When David died, the immediate consequence was not only the personal loss to his family, but also a symbolic moment for U.S. politics. One of the most influential behind-the-scenes figures in the rise of free market advocacy and deregulation was gone. His death amplified public debate about his legacy. Supporters remembered him for his vast philanthropic contributions. Billions donated to medical research, cultural institutions, and education. Critics, however, focused on his role in financing political campaigns and think tanks that opposed climate change regulation and expanded corporate power. In this way, Koch's passing did not silence his influence, but reignited discussions about the role of money in shaping society, showing how mortality does not end one's impact on history. Reflecting on Koch's death, we are reminded of humanity's uneasy relationship with mortality and power. His wealth could extend his reach across politics, science, and art, but not indefinitely preserve his life. Yet memory outlives mortality. Through the institutions he funded, the political structures he influenced, and the cultural debates he sparked, David Koch remains an enduring presence. Humanity immortalizes such figures not only through buildings bearing their names, but also through the narratives, praiseful or critical, that we continue to tell. His death shows that memory and legacy, shaped by both admiration and controversy, are as powerful as wealth itself in defining how history remembers a life. Kathleen Freeman, a veteran character actress whose career spanned over 5 decades, passed away on August 23, 2001, at the age of 82. Her death was the result of lung cancer, a natural yet deeply poignant reminder of the health battles faced by many in her generation. Unlike the dramatic or violent deaths of historical rulers and revolutionaries, Freeman's passing reflected the quieter but no less significant realities of mortality in the modern age, where disease often claims lives despite advancements in medicine. Freeman's death came at a particularly symbolic moment in her career. She was actively working on Broadway in The Full Monty at the time of her diagnosis, demonstrating her lifelong devotion to performance. In fact, she continued acting until shortly before her passing, embodying the values of dedication and resilience that defined her era of Hollywood professionals. The immediate consequence of her death was a wave of admiration from colleagues and audiences who recognized her as a stalwart presence in film and television, an actress who rarely took center stage, but whose comedic timing and warmth elevated countless productions. Her passing also highlighted the often underappreciated role of character actors in shaping cultural memory. Unlike leading stars whose deaths dominate headlines, Freeman's quiet departure amplified her legend in a different way, by drawing attention to the legacy of consistency, professionalism, and the vital importance of supporting players in entertainment history. She had appeared in hundreds of films and television shows, from working with Jerry Lewis in slapstick comedies to memorable roles in The Blues Brothers and The Nutty Professor. In her death, the industry reflected on how figures like Freeman ensured that stories felt lived in, authentic, and deeply human. The way Freeman is remembered reveals humanity's broader relationship with memory and art. Her career illustrates how legacy is not always built on fame or power, but on persistence, craft, and the ability to connect with audiences across generations. She is immortalized through the films and shows that continue to be watched, teaching us that cultural immortality often rests not in being the star of the story, but in being indispensable to its telling. Kathleen Freeman's death reminds us that memory honors both grandeur and subtlety, and that in art, every role, large or small, contributes to how we collectively preserve and celebrate the human experience. Hoyt Wilhelm, one of Major League Baseball's most enduring pitchers and the first reliever ever inducted into the Hall of Fame, passed away on August 23, 2002, at the age of 80. His death was due to heart failure, a natural cause that reflected the inevitable toll of time on a man who had built a career defined by longevity and resilience. Unlike violent or tragic historical deaths, Wilhelm's quiet passing echoed the values of endurance and consistency that he embodied throughout his life and career. Wilhelm's story was unique even before his death. Born in 1922, he served in World War II, where he was wounded in the Battle of the Bulge. This early brush with mortality gave him a sense of perseverance that carried into his baseball career. When he entered the major leagues in 1952, he was already 29 years old, an age when many players were past their prime. Yet Wilhelm went on to pitch for 21 seasons, defying expectations with his trademark knuckleball. His death reminded fans not only of the fragility of life, but also of the way determination can stretch the limits of possibility. The immediate consequences of his passing were tributes from across the baseball community. Writers and former players celebrated his pioneering role in legitimizing relief pitchers, a position often undervalued before his time. Wilhelm's induction into the Hall of Fame in 1985 had already cemented his status, but his death brought renewed recognition to the knuckleball as a symbol of creativity and adaptability in the sport. In this way, his passing amplified his legend, reminding fans and historians of how he shifted the trajectory of pitching strategy in baseball history. The memory of Wilhelm's death and legacy speaks to a broader human truth. Mortality does not diminish achievement, but instead frames it, giving us reason to reflect on what endures. Through the art of baseball writing, Hall of Fame commemorations, and statistical archives, Wilhelm remains immortalized as a figure who expanded the possibilities of the game. His story shows how sports heroes become part of cultural memory, not only for their victories, but for the values they represent. Hoyt Wilhelm's passing illustrates how we remember those who push boundaries, turning their personal endurance into a lasting symbol of human potential.